Okinawa is an island about half the size of Hong Kong. It's the southernmost tip of Japan, and the 1.4 million inhabitants include 45,000 US military personnel, a legacy of the World War in the Pacific 60 years ago. The pattern of development on the islands over that time span has been highly destructive to a diverse and relatively untouched subtropical environment. Some Okinawans blame what they see as authorities kowtowing to its closest ally and react in protest. In its journey from war-wrecked country to the Second World economic power, Japan became a leading advocate for environmental treaties. But Earth Report finds that in its backyard, Japan appears to favor concrete over conservation.
The forces of Germany have surrendered.
As World War II was coming to a close in Europe, fierce battles still raged in the Pacific. The bloodiest and most destructive was the battle for Okinawa on the edge of Japan's southernmost outpost. A cluster of around 1,500 naval vessels bombarded Okinawa for 90 days in what became known as the Typhoon of Steel. Losses were heavy on both sides, but the real tragedy lies with the civilians caught between enemies. The shelling had driven both Japanese forces and Okinawan civilians into cave systems and underground fortifications. School children were drafted into military support roles, including training for heavy weapons use. A witness, who now works at the Himayuri Peace Museum in Okinawa, recounts her experiences.
目の前で一期先輩の小木戸歌子さんっていう友達がお腹やられて腸が全部飛び出してるのにすごく苦しんでいるのにそれを何もしてあげられなかった。水をあげたら静かに亡くなっていくんですけど、それが一番辛いです。
The Japanese propaganda machine had been thorough, with many locals and Japanese soldiers committing forced suicide, believing that capture by the Allied forces would be a worse fate. Some of the caves have become memorials, where school children are able to learn about the horror of the battle for the first time. It's estimated that 250,000 lives were lost, including about 1/3 of the civilian population. Many Okinawans insist that the war continues today, in the form of an occupation by foreign forces, and that the focus of conflict simply shifts from one part of the island to the other. For the last 8 years, campaigners have staged a continuing protest to halt the construction of yet another American military facility in Honoko, on the east coast of Okinawa.
ここに集まっている人たちは一つのグループではなくて日本全国世界中から本当にいろんな思いの人たちが集まってます。で自然を守りたいっていう人たち、自軍を守りたいっていう人、戦争が嫌だっていう人たち、いろんな思いの人たちが集まってただ一点ここに新しい人殺しの基地を作らせてはならないっていうことで一つになって戦っています。
This is Japan's most beautiful coral reef system, and the adjoining seagrass beds are home to some of the 60 remaining dugongs. The ecosystem is so diverse that it is often referred to as the Galapagos of the East. Early each morning, protesters gather in the communications center to plan the daily schedule, an activity that has been going on for so long now that it has become routine. It's not a simple protest against the Americans. They also have civil contractors, Okinawan authorities, and the central government as their targets. It's a game of cat and mouse between the protesters and the developers. The protesters' goal is a round-the-clock occupation of 4 test drilling platforms a kilometer offshore. Today is day 2,765 of their campaign to halt the building of a new base.
This platform is covered with steel nets, which they put in the middle of the night when we were ashore. And that's against the guideline they submitted to Okinawa Prefecture.
Earlier this year in a Californian court, Judge Patel concluded that the US Department of Defense is involved, as the Japanese government is acting on their behalf.
それで、アメリカ政府はジュゴンの方策をちゃんと示しなさいと、こういう裁判です。その裁判を起こしたところ、アメリカ政府は面白いことを言いました。日本政府が海上基地を作って アメリカを使うだけだと。だからアメリカ政府は辺野古で辺野古で飛行場を作ることにアメリカ政府は無関係だ、そういうことを言いました。
Meanwhile, the Hanoko protesters believe that their strategy is working, as authorities don't seem to be in a hurry to evict them. Could this signal a shift in policy at higher levels? It appears that the protest is gaining momentum. Officials say that they're now considering environmental consequences.
That facility is going to be built about 70 meters deep on one side and only 4-5 meters shallow water on the other side. Also, it's really the place of beautiful corals, and we have reports that the dugong is detected over there. Therefore, the current place which we'd like to build is to avoid all possible damages of these two environmental issues.
Okinawan environmental campaign groups argue that it is impossible to avoid massive destruction with this development. The base will cover close to 3 square kilometers of sea with a concrete landing strip. It is, in effect, a massive land reclamation project in the middle of Hanoko Bay. They cite the dangers of unproven technology and construction techniques and give the example of the new Kansai International Airport in Osaka slowly sinking back into the sea. But there is powerful support in some quarters for the Hanoko base. Business leaders and officials contend that the base construction will inject vitality into a fading local economy.
アメリカの兵隊さんたちも、休みの時には街に出てきて、やっぱいろんな形で賑わしてくれるし、外に出れば当然消費拡大に回っていきます。そういう人の出入りが多いと。それで活気を戻すということは大変いいことだと思います。私たちはどっちかというとそこら辺は理解者として常日頃接しておるところがあります。
There is a widespread view that the bases are a key part of the local economy. But official figures from the Military Affairs Base Division, the part of the Okinawan government responsible for managing relations with the US military, indicate that the actual expenditure contributes less than 5% to the Okinawan economy. Most goods are imported. The Hanoko base is not the only threat to the reef systems of Okinawa. Other coral and tidal foreshore habitats have vanished under ambitious civil projects, such as landfill, port facilities, and offshore road construction. There's nothing left of nature in nearly all of the entire southern end of Okinawa Island, and the same pattern of economic development seems to be happening at the relatively unspoiled northern part of the island.
その亜熱帯の森で必要のない道をどんどん開けていく。そのことによって土が海に流れ出していって海のサンゴを殺していく。つまりサンゴ礁も殺し亜熱帯の森も固有の生き物たちが生きることができない。そういう開発が1972年からこれまで35年も続いています。そのことで沖縄の個性が自然の個性が消されていく大変な問題を引き起こしています。
When I was small, this was a clear and beautiful river. We used to swim. We used to enjoy the clear, beautiful water. Look now, it's so muddy. It's so dirty. Look at the mountain. You can see the Marines bombing. I think that's where it starts, of this muddy, dirty water. We need to do something about this.
Under the San Francisco Treaty of 1951, the USA claimed residual sovereignty of the islands until a successful campaign forced reversion to Japanese jurisdiction in 1972. During this time, intense military and civil construction reset the foundations of their society.